Geiger Investments presents the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger. There are many pieces to the modern retirement puzzle. This show talks about those pieces of retirement and the tools used to help the retired and soon to be retired toward their lifetime goals. Welcome. The Academy is on the air.
Welcome to the Retirement Focus Academy, powered by Geiger Investments and Kevin Geiger. You can always go to the website to find out more, GeigerInvestments.com, G-E-I-G-E-R, GeigerInvestments.com. I'm Mark Elliott. If you have questions about anything Kevin talks about today we're going to talk a little bit about really your investments. How do we go about doing it? Your retirement plan is not your investments, and that's what a lot of us think. Our 401ks and IRAs are really an important part, an integral part of our retirement plan, but they're not the plan. There's an income plan, investment strategies, tax-efficient strategies, health care, long-term care, legacy, estate planning. What about Social Security? When do I take it, Kevin? Well, that's in the income part. What about Medicare? There's so many options. What do I do? Medigap, Medicare supplements, Medicare Advantage. How do I figure all that out? Well, that's in the health care part. So there's a lot of moving parts. If you'd like to learn more, you have questions, it's 843-375-8700. There's never a cost to chat with the team. They're here to help. They just don't know if they can help till they hear your situation. Again, that number is 843-375-8700. And I do think it's one thing that we're going to talk about, this risk versus reward kind of a thing. You know, during our working years, it's all about the rate of return. How much can you make me, Kevin, on my money? I need a great return on my money, on my investment, so that I can retire someday. But I think sometimes we get caught up into, holy cow, I've got to take a huge risk every month with my portfolio so that I can make some money, because the safe world, I can't just put money in CDs. So this risk versus reward, I mean, if you go to Vegas, and if I go to Vegas, I might have $100 or $200, but I got a cap. And if I win, I put it in my pocket and I walk away. Now, there are those that will just let it ride, which means eventually that means more hotels and more casinos pop up in Vegas, because that's how they operate. So how do you look at this? You know, should I let it all ride? How much risk should I be taking? How do we figure all this out? Because it seems like it's changing all the time.
You know, it is. It's constantly everly changing. But here's the problem. If you're getting near retirement or you're in retirement and you realize you have to take more risk in your mind in order to try to make up, because this is probably one of the most common things I run across is you didn't do a lot to save in your younger age, so then all of a sudden you're in your last 5 years, 10 years or sooner to retirement, so you end up taking more risk in your portfolio. And there's a problem with that. Yes, the old rule of thumb used to state, yes, you have to take a lot of risk in order to get the maximum gain. But that's not always the case, because when you run the numbers in the past, and she ran these numbers years back showing someone that took an aggressive approach and stayed with that aggressive approach with the ups and downs of the market did almost nearly the same type of return as someone that was middle of the road. Why? Because yeah, you might make a lot of money, but guess what? When things go down, you look at the pandemic last year, you look at 2008, those risky portfolios took the biggest downturn, biggest crash out of everything else and took a lot longer to make back up versus someone that might have been ultra conservative, for example. So you got to understand that you might make up some quick bucks, but like last year, we never saw this pandemic coming. So how are you going to look at that crystal ball and realize, remember that old, what was it, that little 8-ball thing, and you flipped it up and that little thing would pop up and tell you. Magic 8-ball, right? Let's face it, unless you're relying on that with your investment strategies, it's probably not going to work out so well. Just like going to Vegas, right? We all know at some point you got to walk away from that table, because if you don't, the house is going to win. And who's going to win when the market downturns? The people that are, shorting the market in a sense, right? So you've got to be conscious of that kind of stuff. So you don't need to take so much risk. But then the other problem you're having with now is too many retirees are taking risks for other reasons, right? So they're taking too much risk because of the fact that there is no, in their mind, there is no safe spot to stick their bond money, if you want to call it, because the bond market's been a total disaster and continues to be a disaster. So that used to be the safe spot, which right now is probably one of the most riskiest spots. So they look and go, well, if I, spread this out across the different stocks and things like that, I'm diversified enough where I'm reducing my risk. But the problem is you're still taking too much risk in your portfolio. And what people don't realize, or they just don't want to look at, is there's other alternative investment strategies that can actually provide a bond-like type of security that you're looking for that side of your portfolio, so you can start reducing that risk inside there. Because if you keep taking the risk you're taking and stuff like this, you're going to completely destroy your retirement going forward, because we don't know when the next big bubble in the market's going to happen. I mean, everyone keeps talking about, well, we're coming up to it now, and then all of a sudden 6 months goes by and we don't go there. Or since '08, this market's just been rallying besides a pandemic, and it seems like it's never going to end. But the reality is everything comes down. It's like gravity. It's nothing's going to sit in the air. It's eventually going to come down. It's the same thing. So you've got to understand these things, and you got to realize that there are alternatives that can help you with this stuff going forward.
You've been in the financial world now for over 20 years, Kevin. What I wonder is how different is to, say, somebody retiring back in 2000 to somebody wanting to retire in 2021, 2022, 2023. How are those two different?
Well, it's a lot different, right? Because let's face it, about 20 to 30 years ago, pensions were in existence more than it is today. So, people didn't have to worry about, how their investments were invested, right? So they could do things a lot differently than we are right now. Because let's face it, right now, today is a totally different picture when it comes to that kind of stuff. We have to rely on everything we've saved, that big nest egg that we've saved and worked so hard for the last 20 years. We now have to make sure that it's going to last longer than we do. And not only just us. Maybe you have a spouse that is 5, 10, 15 years younger than you. You have to build that longevity off your savings off of that person unless you have some other things in place. Like certain things we've done with clients that have a lot younger spouses. We've set up a life insurance policy, for example, on yourself in order to offset that down the road. So there's creative ways of doing this kind of stuff, but it's a totally different. Plus, 20, 30 years ago, the bond market was great. Let's look in the early 80s. Remember the interest rates back then were in the teens. So you could put money in a CD and make a fortune on these things. Well, when's the last time the rates have ever been above the 5 mark? I mean, mortgage rates, I think back in early 2000s, when you could get like a 5 3/4 interest rate on a mortgage, it was like, holy cow, this is the cheapest rates we can get. Now people are refinancing their mortgages, getting 30-year mortgages for 2.5%. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. But that also affects you in retirement. So it might save you money in loans, but it's affecting your retirement going forward. But again, 20, 30 years ago, we had that kind of stuff, but also 20, 30 years ago, we didn't have all these alternative investment strategies that are available today. So
because you think of the 90s, it was the old 60-40 stocks bonds. That was kind of, you're going to be fine because the bond market, interest rates and all of that, I mean, everything was good. Because if you retired in 2000 and all your money that you were going to survive on came from the market, well, we know that whole 2000 decade was the lost decade in the markets because of the dot-com bubble bursting, the Great Recession. It was not a great time if all your money was going to come for your retirement from your market accounts because it was a lost decade. So we can't control when we retire in a decade for the markets, for example. So we've got to have options. And I know there's a lot of different terms that are thrown around that I don't really understand them all. So I'm going to ask you to maybe explain some of this so we get a better feel, because there is passive investing. There is tactical investing. There is active investing. We've talked robo-advisor on this program before. What do all those terms mean, and why is it, I guess, important for somebody that's thinking about retiring? Why do they need to understand some of these terms?
Oh, it's very important, right? When you're younger, fine, you can just go into a passive investment strategy. That means you picked an S&P 500 index fund and maybe a couple other things. You just let it ride for the next 15, 20 years.
So that's the old buy and hold, right?
Yep, buy and hold strategy. So very classic. It's been around for a long time, still around, right? And robo-advisor is the same way. It's a passive investment strategy. There's not much management to it at all because of that whole stuff. And then you got tactical, right? Tactical became real popular about 5, 6 years ago, and it's still around today. But what we found out was about 3 years ago, when the market was, I call it very skittish. It was like one day the volatility index shot up and the market was going down. And then all of a sudden the next day or 2 days later, the market shot back up. Well, the way tactical investing works is when the indicators indicate that volatility is jumping, tactical portfolio managers will end up pulling more money out of the market, trying to reduce the risk of what your portfolio could lose. So it's great when we had, like last year, for example, the pandemic hit, volatility went up, the tactical stuff pulled out, and that was great. And then as things went back down, it kind of worked really well. But a couple of years ago, it didn't work out at all. I mean, most people's portfolios are flat or down, where everyone else's was up because it was always missing the mark. So tactical is not a bad thing, but you got to understand if the market's kind of an up and down, which again, we don't have that crystal ball to know what the future is going to bring, it's not always the best approach. And as far as what we do in our portfolios is we do active managing. So unlike, these things that have these indicators that trigger things, we do different things inside our portfolios. We're actively managing it on a daily basis. We are finding ways to reduce the risk in the portfolio so you're not taking risk, but yet we're finding a way to reward you with bigger returns when we can find it, but at the same time reducing that risk. And if things get kind of volatile, we look at things to make sure it's just not a hiccup in the market, to make sure it's a real reason to make changes or to reduce your investment positions inside the market to help in that stuff. So it's like taking tactical, it's like taking all these different things and mixing it all into one, and that's what active managing is, and that's what we do differently when we do stuff in portfolios compared to some other stuff out there.
So let's finish this segment up with this, because I think this is really interesting, and I think you do need to explain it to folks. Is when they come in and they give you their statements, for example, 401ks, IRAs, and the like, well, you're not doing it personally. I mean, you are to a degree, but you're sending it on to a third party, and it's called Riskalyze. That's what you use to kind of figure out how much risk are we taking, right? The current investment risk level that we carry. Can you explain Riskalyze, what it is, why you think this is so important?
I think this is probably one of the most important things when we sit down with people, and why is it? You can go into anyone's, financials office, and they're going to sit down with you and they're going to go, whoa, your portfolio is really risky, or, oh yeah, your portfolio is, not that great. We could do better. Or, and all of a sudden they're showing these big returns on their stuff. But the problem is, how do you know how much risk your portfolio really is? How do you know how much risk their portfolio really is? And so what we do is we use Riskalyze. And what's neat is we take your statements and we go in the system and we plug in the exact dollar amounts and percentage-wise you have in each different fund you have. So we take a snapshot from your statements. And then what we do is we push the button. And now Riskalyze behind the scenes is looking at every type of stock, mutual fund, ETF, and everything that's in there. And they're finding a way to score based on the risk of each one of those individual things because it's actually rating everything that's out there. They use the Morningstar information. They do all this different stuff behind the scenes. And then it comes out with a number, which is 1 to 100. 1 being the least risky, which would be like a money market, which does nothing. And then, of course, the most risky thing, like buying one stock, it would be, 100. So typically portfolios end up being somewhere between 40 to about, 75, 80 range. And that kind of gauges as far as where you stand. Well, too often we have people that come in, we plug this stuff in, and all of a sudden they get a score that's like an 85 or 90%. They're going, whoa, why am I so high? Well, what we find out when we digest and look at their stuff is a lot of their, mutual funds they might have had inside their portfolio has a lot of stuff that are crossing over, meaning you might have 5 different mutual funds inside that 7 mutual fund portfolio that has the same Apple stock, has the Tesla, has all these different things, and it's all the same stock, and so wonder it's been performing great because the stocks have been doing well, but you're also means you have too much risk because you're investing in too much in that one side of the company. And so then we do the same thing for our portfolios. We want to make sure that we're keeping the risk low, and it also, projects up to a 95% accuracy almost is what they call it, what you can expect in the next 6 months on the high side and the low side in a normal market. So at least you can kind of see and gauge what to expect. And many times we'll look at their portfolio and it's like, it might show up big upside, but also so huge downside if the market goes down versus stuff that we do. So it's always neat when we do this kind of stuff because our portfolios match to match typically ends up being a lower score and showing possibly a better return because of that, because we diversify the portfolios properly and we're reducing the risk and finding ways to find you value inside there and making sure that you're not doing the wrong things.
So you think about it, and you've probably been asked maybe if you have an advisor, are you a moderate risk taker? Are you a big risk taker? There's terms that they can put in there. Riskalyze is actually scoring it. So because there could be two moderate investors. Hey, I don't want to take a lot of risk, but I need some growth. And all of a sudden you say, well, that $200,000, if you lose $50,000, are you going to be okay? One might say yes. The other one says, are you kidding? That's not moderate. That's a quarter of my portfolio is gone. I can't do that. Riskalyze actually gives you a score. If you'd like to learn more about this, how much risk are you taking? How much risk should you be taking? Because those are really important, I think, answers to find out. The team at Geiger Investments are here to help. They can run this Riskalyze process for you. 843-375-8700. 843-375-8700. There's no cost. There's no obligation. Again, it's 843-375-8700. So you think about it. We've all heard about diversification. What is it, and what does it really mean to me and the success of my retirement? That's where we're going next. Stay with us. This is the Retirement Focus Academy, powered by Geiger Investments and Kevin Geiger. We're back in 1 minute.
You know what you want to do in retirement, but do you know how to get there? Get the retirement planning information you need by joining Kevin Geiger of Geiger Investments for the Retirement Focus Academy. What's the best way for you to take Social Security? When can you sign up for Medicare, and what does it actually cover? What and is there a way to lower your tax bill? These and much more will be discussed. To enroll in an upcoming virtual Retirement Focus Academy course, visit retirementfocusacademy.com or call 843-790-9293. Plan today so you can do the things you've dreamt about doing in retirement. Sign up for the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger of Geiger Investments at retirementfocusacademy.com or call 843-790-9293. Advisory services offered through Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC and Geiger Investments are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Our firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government.
You're listening to the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger, powered by Geiger Investments. 843-375-8700.
We're talking about the investment world today, really the risk versus reward. You know, what's that rate of return you can give me, Kevin? I can get 10% down the road, guaranteed. Well, maybe not, right? It's about how do you balance the growth need versus the safety need. And one of the big terms when it comes to our investments, Kevin, is always diversification. So one of the keys is I've got to have 50 different mutual funds. Now I'm diversified. Maybe not.
No. Yeah, that's a definitely big misconception in the industry, right? Saying, well, I've got 17 mutual funds in my portfolio, so I'm good. I'm diversified. I've done it right. And then I go, okay, so what's in your portfolio? What do you mean? Well, I got 17 mutual funds. I go, no. What is in those mutual funds? And so I go, go pull your stuff online, prospectus stuff, and take a look and see what stocks are actually in there. And I said, and I want you to come back to me and you tell me out of the 17, how many of them have at least 5 different stocks, right? And then I come back and go, well, it's kind of funny because about 70% of them had the same stock stuff. Oh yeah, there you go. So not very diversified, right? But in today's world, the bond world is a disaster. It's continuing to be a disaster, and I don't think we're going to see any end to that in the near future. So you've got to find alternatives, and there's plenty of alternatives today that have been available that most people just don't even realize, or they just kind of turn their back to them because they just don't understand them. But there are alternative investment strategies that can provide you that bond-like, security, if you want to call it, where you can still have some market growth and things like that, but at the same time having some downside protection in case things go crazy in the stock market. There's things that are available out there, but if you don't open your eyes and get the reality that there is some stuff out there, and sitting down for a professional who's going to find a way to help you diversify that portfolio. On top of that, take the rest of your portfolio and make sure that you're diversified and you're not just spread out across 17 mutual funds where 70% of them have the same stock portfolio. You won't know that unless you I would say, get up, pick up the phone, and say it's time to sit down with someone to make sure that we're looking at all the options that are out there going forward.
So Geiger Investments, Kevin and Lauren have set this company up to be independent. They're not answering to a board of directors anywhere. They're not working for one of the big companies you've heard about. It is Kevin and Lauren's company. So in the investment world, they operate under the fiduciary standard, morally, legally, ethically obligated to do what is in the client's best interest. That's really important. That's a pretty small percentage of advisors that actually operate under the fiduciary standard. But they can also help you in the insurance world, life insurance, annuities, and the like, a little bit more on the safer side. And probably, most of us probably need a blending of the two worlds, the investment world and the insurance world. And we think about being safe. My granddad, who retired in the 70s, he was probably a bond guy, not a market guy, but a bond guy, because he had his pension. He just wanted to be safe. Well, you keep talking, the bond world is not exactly going in the right direction because bonds work the opposite of interest rates, and interest rates, it seems like the only way they can go is up, which means that your bond values even go lower. So CDs, my granddad in the 70s, as we talked about, you could have double-digit interest rates back in the 70s and 80s, and so your CD was making 10, 12, 14%. You just laddered those. You were winning the game pretty easily. So there are still people today that are in the CD world because it's safe, but they might only be getting 1%. So how do we maybe handle this area of safety when we need growth, Kevin? So I got to be all in the market, And now you're talking about alternatives. How do we figure all this out?
Well, that's just it. So, over the years, the CD market obviously was starting to get a little better, and then all of a sudden, obviously, recently it dropped back down. And I have so many clients that still have CDs, and I'm getting more phone calls about going, Kevin, my CD just renewed, and I'm getting like 1%. I was getting 1.5%, now I'm getting 1 or below that, and they're concerned about it. Well, here's the reality: there is options out there, right? So the insurance world has become a huge area for CD alternative strategies. You have two different options that are really, they're called more of the safety versions of these insurance products, right? So you have a fixed annuity, which will just give you a fixed rate, just like a CD. There's no bells and whistles to it. There's no cost that you think, I hear annuities are expensive. Well, it's a fixed annuity. If it says it's going to give you 3 or 4% a year, it's going to give you 3 or 4% a year up to whatever it is, 5 years, 6 years, 7, 10, whatever term you do. Obviously, the longer term you go out, the higher the interest rates, right? And then you have indexed annuities, right? So indexed annuities, same thing. Many of them out there, they don't have they're not charging you anything every year. And what they do is they can tie it to something. For example, they can tie it to the S&P 500. And what they do is, based on how well the S&P 500 does, is based on how much of an interest credit you'll get for that year. So let's just say, you get a credit and you make, 5 or 7% on it for that year. And then all of a sudden next year, the S&P and the whole market collapses, right? And we're like in 08 and it's down 40, 50%. Guess what? That return you made last year and that credit you made, so let's say you had 100,000 is now worth 107. It's still 107. So you didn't lose any money going forward in this thing. And so when the market starts coming back around, well, guess what? Now if the market goes up for the next year, you now get to make interest credits on that going forward. So it's very similar to a CD, but also provides a lot better return. And last and most importantly, and I don't know about you, but when you put money into CDs, I think the worst thing about CDs is you get that lovely 1099 at the end of the year for that little piddly interest you got. So not only did you really make no money, now you got to pay the IRS money on that interest. Well, when you use these, fixed and indexed type of annuities, for example, they're tax deferred, meaning maybe this is money you're probably just never going to touch. You're like, it's extra money, I'm just putting it in there to grow. And let's say you never touch for the next 10 or 15 years, for example. Well, now over those years, you've never paid income taxes on it. It's continued to grow. It's not depleting your liquid assets to pay taxes because it's been sitting there growing, and it just puts you in a better situation financially going forward. So these are great alternatives for a low interest rate environment, whether it's a CD or as a bond alternative strategy. So CD alternatives and bond alternatives, fixed and indexed annuities are great resources for that.
How about variable annuities?
Now, variable annuities is one area, but the problem with variable annuities is it's in the market and all that stuff. So if you're trying to take some risk, yeah, that's the way to go, but you might as well put it somewhere else. The only
there's no guarantee you're not going to lose money in those.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, so where's the variable annuity come into place, right? So let's say you have a ton of money, you've already maxed out your IRAs and your 401ks, and you want to put more money away and still be invested into the market, and you want to defer that till when you turn 59 and a half or older. Well, then you can use any type of annuity vehicle, like a variable annuity, invest into different mutual funds, ETFs, and all that stuff, have the same type of kind of thing, but the biggest advantage to this is now you're not having to pay any income taxes on this money, and you can basically treat it like an additional retirement account for yourself down the road. That's where a great place where those can come in to play, because people always ask, what's the point of a variable annuity? That's where it would play in. But other than that, that'd probably be the only reason why I would use one of those.
Yeah, so here's the deal. There's a lot of moving parts when it comes. I think we kind of act like we know stocks, bonds, mutual funds, ETFs, and the like, because they're talked about all the time. But life insurance, annuities, all the different types of annuities are not really talked about all the time. And it's one of those areas that if you'd like to learn more, Kevin and Lauren and the team at Geiger Investments can walk you through that. There's even probably a workshop, Kevin, I'm guessing, on the annuity world on retirementfocusacademy.com where we can learn more. So you do have that opportunity to go there, no cost, retirementfocusacademy.com. It's a different world of retirement. We don't have the pensions and Social Security, and we've already paid the house off because our house cost us $30,000 like it did for my grandparents. No, that house cost us $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, and we're just in a different world right now. So we do have to think about the safe aspect of our retirement portfolio because we're not in the accumulation phase. We're heading into the distribution phase. Now it's about all the hard work, and we're now hopefully reaping the benefits. We've got to have a plan about it. And again, the number, if you have questions, it's 843-375-8700, 843-375-8700. I guess, what would you say is the biggest risk to our retirement right now?
Biggest risk, I think, to retirement is going to be the fear of running out of money, right? And actually, there was a study that just came out from BlackRock that stated that 89% of workers that are saving for retirement through their 401k are looking for something that's going to help generate an income in retirement. 90% of them said they would be willing and happy to own some type of guaranteed income to positively affect their financial well-being going forward, right? So this is a staggering number. I just read this today, and I was like, wow, this is exactly true. But everyone says this, but here's the funny part about it is when we sit down with a lot of people, as soon as you start talking about, here we have a scenario, some type of solution that's going to provide this type of scenario, as soon as you say the annuity world, they run for the hills, it kind of blows my mind because they go, this is going to basically create your own personal pension account for yourself and your spouse. This is going to be the way to basically shelter your income in retirement, so no matter what the markets do, you have something in place that's going to provide that pension-like income for yourself. So the biggest fear, if you have that fear of running out of money in retirement, just like these other 89% of these workers that are still working and coming into retirement, these are the types of solutions that will provide that for you going forward. But you've got to be open-minded to that, and you've got to look at the solutions out there that might be the best fit for you. There's a lot of different products and solutions out there, but not everyone is meant for every different person. Every situation's different, and that's why when we sit down with people, we build a custom plan that's going to have the right solution that's going to fit your need.
Because you think about it, I mean, we all have different hopes and dreams for our retirement. Some might need $20,000 or $30,000 of monthly income. Others might need $5,000, right? We're all different in that area. So the plans that the team at Geiger Investments create are all about you. It's all about you. And there is no question, Kevin, we've all heard it forever. What you don't know, you don't know. Well, one of the things I think when it comes to retirement planning in the investment world, the insurance world, how do we put them together to blend the right retirement plan for ourselves? This is really where you and the team at Geiger Investments come in to guide us.
That's absolutely right. And that's just really it at the end of the day. You're hearing us on the radio talking about this stuff, and you're going, this is interesting. But the first course of action is getting up and getting on the phone and saying, you know what, it's time to sit down. It's time to find, have a plan put together that's custom to me, because I want to know that I have a ship that is steering in the right direction, and that I know I'm not steering into a storm one day, because I have no idea if I go left in the ocean or go right. I have no idea where the storms are. So if I have someone that's guiding me through this, like a navigation and a weather map and everything else, that's our job, and it's the first step to a successful retirement.
So you think about it. Hey, Kevin, when can I retire? Do I have enough? Will my money last as long as I do? Will my loved ones be okay if something happens to me? At the end of the day, we really just want to know, if we pull the plug on working and head off into retirement, are we going to be okay? Those are the big questions. Those are our big concerns. Kevin and the team at Geiger Investments are here to help, but they can't help if you don't give them a call. They're here to help guide you. 843-375-8700 again is the number. No cost, no obligation, no pressure for this. The team's here to help. They just don't know if they can until they hear your situation. They would love to help, but they don't know if they can until you call them. 843-375-8700. 843-375-8700. It's time to act. Let's be proactive, not reactive. Proactive. 843-375-8700. Kevin, enjoyed it. Have a great week. We'll be back again next week. Have a great week.
Sounds good. Take care, Mark, and take care, y'all.
This has been the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger. Advisory services offered through Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, and Geiger Investments are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims-paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC. This radio show is a paid placement.